In this video, we will cover tile maps and tile sets and teach you how to quickly build out a nice level. Right now, we have basic movement, jumping, and double jumping with animations, but we have no real level to play in. But instead of building our level by placing sprites one by one, we're going to use tile maps to build our levels. This is much faster and much more efficient. The idea behind tile maps is pretty simple. Instead of placing individual objects, we paint our level using a grid. This makes it easier to both build, edit, and scale our game. So let's start by creating a tile map. We will right-click in the hierarchy, go to 2D object and tile map, and then rectangular. You can see in the scene view, this already creates a grid, and in the hierarchy, we now have a grid and a tile map. We will need multiple tile maps, but for this first tile map, I will use it as my background. The grid controls the layout of the world, and the tile map is where we will paint our level. Before we use our tiles, we firstly need to prepare the sprites. I will go to my imported assets. I will enter my background folder, and you can select any background you want, but I think for my level I will use the green one. Firstly, I will need to change the pixels per unit to 32, as this is also the size we're using for our player, and I will change the filter mode from bilinear to point. This makes the pixels more sharp. I will hit apply, and now that I've prepared my sprite, I can create my first tile map. I will do that by going to Window, then 2D and Tile Palette. This gives us a new window which we can take and drag and place wherever we want. I will place mine in the bottom right corner. You can see as a default it already selects our background tile map, as this is the only tile map we've created so far. When we create more tile maps later on, you can select the specific tile map you want to edit using this drop-down menu. Now we can create our tile palette by using this button, Create New Tile Palette. I will call my tile palette Background, hit Create. This will create a new tile palette prefab that I will just place in the current folder I'm in. Now that we have our tile palette prefab, I can take my sprite and drag into the tile palette. This will create a new asset, which I will just save in my current folder as well. Now I can select a tile from my tile palette and just start to paint on the level. But you can see this would not be very efficient if you had to mark it all like this. What I will do instead is delete all of these, and I will use this tool instead to fill out an area. Remember, this white outline is only what the camera sees. At a later point, we will make the camera follow the player. So a good thing to do now would be to build a level larger than what the camera sees. So I will just go ahead and paint outside my camera area. With this tool selected, I can place a tile, hold down the left mouse button, and just start dragging. This will create a nice background pattern for a game. But you can see now our player is hidden. That is because the background is in layer 0. And this is the same layer that our player is currently in. Since it's our background and we don't need to interact with it and collide with it, I will place my background in layer -1. Now you can see we have our player and a platform, and we can still play the game just as we did before with a nice background. Now with our background done, we can start building our level. I will right-click on Grid and create a new tile map as a child object of my grid, which will also be rectangular, and I will call this tile map Ground and Platforms. I am creating a tile map for my ground and platforms because I want to assign the ground layer to these. This is so that the ground check can be true and the player can jump from these. If I were to paint my walls with this as well, we could face problems with the ground check and the player being able to jump on the walls. I will just delete the placeholder platform, as we won't be needing that anymore. And now with that set up, we can head into our imported assets again. I will go to my terrain and I will create a new tile palette. This will also be ground and platforms. I will create my tile palette prefab in this folder, and I will also create a new folder, which I will call tiles. You will see why I do that in a minute. You can see we have a terrain tile here, which we can expand. This PNG contains the individual tiles that we need to build a level. Currently, our sprites do not scale correctly, and also we would like to slice these sprites up so we can place each tile individually. So firstly, I will go to my main terrain asset here, but before we start using it, we need to do a few tweaks. Firstly, you can see the pixels per unit is 100 on this one. This terrain asset is 16 by 16, so I will change my pixels per unit to 16. And of course, we will also change our filter mode from bilinear to point. I will hit apply. And this will cause a few issues, because remember, our Ninja Frog character is 32 by 32, and that is what we set the pixel size to be. This will cause a few issues because now the scale of the character will be relatively small compared to the size of our assets. So I will also go ahead and change the pixels per unit for my character to 16. This will cause it to be a bit bigger, so therefore we also need to go to the player game object, where we need to edit our box collider to fit our new character. And we also need to go to the ground check and move that around a bit to make sure it aligns with where the character's feet are now at. When that is done, then we can head back to our terrain asset and start slicing these sprites up. So with this main asset selected, I will open up my sprite editor, and we already know from the name that this is 16 by 16. So I will go to slice and type. I will change from automatic to grid by cell size. We will also need to change this to 16 by 16. And as we can see, this lines up pretty nicely with creating each individual tile for our tile sets. We can hit slice and then apply and then close out the sprite editor. Now we got these nice individual tiles and we can create our tile map. I will collapse this again and I will simply drag it into our ground and platforms tile palette. For the placement of the tiles, I will select the newly created tiles folder, and you can see now why we created a tiles folder for this. When we open this, you can see each individual tile from our tile palette is placed here, and that could very quickly cause a lot of mess in our terrain folder. So that's the reason why we created a separate folder for this. Now that I have my tile palette, I can simply select a tile. For instance, I can use this tile for the ground, and I can just simply take it, start dragging. I can either select one individual tile, like I just did there, or I can hold down my left mouse button and mark several tiles in one go, and I can simply place them like this. If I for some reason accidentally place a tile in the wrong spot, then I can use my eraser tool to delete the tiles. I can either delete one tile at a time, or I can highlight a bigger area, mark the eraser tool, and then erase a larger area at one time. And I think this is a good time for a challenge. Use the tile palette we just created to build out your level. Also create a separate tile map to use as your walls and ceilings. After you've given it a try, I will show you how I will build my level. Don't spend too much time on this, as in the next video we will introduce rule tiles, which will make level building much faster. This challenge is more to give you an idea of how to use the tile palette. Pause the video now, give it a good go, and I'll see you when you come back. Okay, welcome back. I will just show you quickly how you could build out your level. I will start by erasing these two, and in my grid parent object, I will create a new tile map, which will be rectangular as the other ones are. I will call this one boundaries, and you can see now it's instantly selected in the drop-down menu. I can then mark a few tiles, and I could, for instance, place them like this. Then I'll just place a few platforms here and there, and I'll take my player and move here to the left corner, just to give us sort of a nice starting point for the level. The camera won't follow me yet, but you can see here I can walk around and I can jump on the individual platforms I placed. Of course, we also need a collider on our walls and ceilings. So I'll go to my boundaries game object, add a component, a Tilemap Collider 2D, and a composite collider 2D. This will generate a rigid body 2D, where I will change the body type from dynamic to static, as we don't want this to move around, and I'll use the composite operation and set this as merge, just to keep the colliders nice and clean. And now we have like a basic level layout. One small issue though is that if I for instance jump on the walls, you can see that my player sticks to the walls. Luckily, there's a pretty easy fix for this. If we go to our player, you can see we have the rigid body 2D component, and in here we have what is called a material. We can create a new material for our player to make sure that they don't stick to the wall. So I will create a new folder in my assets folder, and I will call it materials. In here, I can go to create 2D and create a new physics material 2D. I will simply call it player material, and you can see we have 4 variables here. We have friction, bounciness, friction combine, and bounce combine. The friction simply controls which level of friction a game object has when colliding with another object. So we can simply put this to 0. I can go to my player, go to the rigid body 2D component, and just drag our newly created material in here. Now when I play my game, when I jump on the walls, I won't stick to them anymore. Well done on this video. In the next video, we'll cover rule tiles, which will really speed up your level building. Until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.